We have moved from Prague to Vietnam. I travel fast, and I'm ready to talk about how Osa Odighizuwa, the 49ers trade acquisition, plans to deliver his career best season. In all seriousness, I'm still in Prague, but this is one of the coolest discoveries I have made. A cultural tie and legacy that dates back to the Cold War era, and a link between the Czech Republic and Vietnam. More on that in a bit, though, because this was Osa Odighizuwa joining Richard Sherman's podcast just a few days ago.
And, I'm excited. I know it's a good scheme. I see some of the tools that I'm going to be allowed to use to make plays in the run game. And I'm excited about that stuff. I feel like getting some handcuffs taken off of me a little bit to be able to kind of have one of the better years that I've had against the run, if not the best year that I've had. Like, I'm looking forward to just being able to make plays within this scheme. I feel like there's a good amount of variability. I feel like when you have to do the same thing all the time, you're predictable. And when you're predictable in football, you're very beatable. Because I'm a smart player, you know what I mean? So, like, obviously attack is going to be the main focus, but being able to do different things at different times, I may look like I'm about to attack, but I do something else.
No Lions on the regular season schedule for the 49ers. Osa's not going to get to chase down Jared Goff unless it happens in the postseason. But what do you think there about the diversity of what Raheem Morris and I think by extension Chris Kasarik have planned for the 49ers D-line is really, really interesting, because Osa was a productive player for the Dallas Cowboys. I've cited this stat a lot. He had 52 pressures all on his own last year, and the 49ers defensive tackles had 56 combined. So obviously Osa is going to help the 49ers pass rush in an immense way, but his run defense has been known as the weaker part of his game. But what he talked about there, the creativity that he expects the 49ers coaching staff to implement up front, the variety that's going to keep defenses off balance, maybe we see Osa Odighizuwa's best run defense for the 49ers, and they've already very clearly said they expect him to be a 3-down player for them. But we're talking full versatility, which is something the 49ers defensive line badly needs. Think about 2024 finishing the season as one of the NFL's worst run defense, number 29 expected points added in that phase, and then 2025 following that up with the least sacks in the NFL, the worst pass rush in the NFL, only 20 sacks. They need players who are going to be able to stay on the field and threaten offenses in both ways. And that's why they traded a third-round pick to Dallas for Osa Odighizuwa, a player whom they believe can truly do that. Now, we want to talk versatility. Where I'm at right now embodies that. This is about 30 minutes outside the middle of Prague, one of the most traditional European cities, old town, cobblestone streets, all this and all that. The Czech Republic and Vietnam were once political allies because they were both communist countries during the Cold War, and there was a worker exchange program that sent thousands of Vietnamese here right to the middle of Europe. There then was a revolution in Czechoslovakia in 1989, no longer a communist country, but many of the Vietnamese stayed, and they established this area, which is called Little Hanoi. Obviously, Hanoi, the biggest city in Vietnam. Little Hanoi, outside of Vietnam, here in Prague, is a spot where you can experience the fullest Vietnamese culture. Back to the middle of Prague. Speaking of the Cold War, this metro station is the deepest one in all of Europe because it was a nuclear shelter. Trade prospects. We know that they traded for Osa Odighizuwa. Who might they trade away? Two players the 49ers might deem expendable. Demarcus Robinson on the offensive side of the ball and Ji'Ayir Brown on the defensive side of the football. Now, Robinson, a lot of that I think is going to be contingent on how healthy the 49ers stay at the receiver position. Because if they do stay healthy, then guys like Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing, 49ers may determine that they've proven themselves enough over the course of training camp to where Robinson, who's obviously going to be 33 years old, has $2 million of guaranteed money, might be somebody the 49ers feel that they can ship away for a 6th or a 7th round pick and offload some contract money. the way that he performed against the Philadelphia Eagles last year in the postseason shows that Demarcus Robinson still has some potential value, some potential juice left in the tank. Quick trip to Vietnam in the books. We have made it back to the middle of Prague. On the defensive side of the football, Ji'Ayir Brown is a name that 49ers fans have talked a lot about when it comes to the potential trade market. And you know, what's interesting is that they're not that deep at safety, but if somebody like Marquise Siegel takes that next step in coverage, I mean, he was really, really struggling covering last year, but he was a good tackler. If somebody like Malik Mustafa is able to deliver a rebound year following the post-ACL season, obviously down season for Malik in 2025, then you could start to see the 49ers potentially moving and turning the page at the safety position, because Ji'Ayir Brown is a Steve Wilks guy, and that was, 3 defensive coordinators ago for the 49ers. It was Wilks back in 2023 who got up on the table and said, I love this safety out of Penn State, who had the most interceptions over a 2-season span of any draftable player that year, and Brown became a 49er, and I thought that his rookie season was successful for San Francisco, but the big concern about him was the speed coming out of college. He ran only about a 4.6 coming out of Penn State. There were questions if he'd be able to succeed at the NFL level without the 4.3, 4.4 speed at safety. And you know, maybe under Steve Wilks and some of the defensive nuances the 49ers ran then, things worked, but obviously things changed. Robert Saleh especially wanted much more speed from the safety position. Now it really is a matter of what Raheem Morris is going to want at safety. And remember that defensive coordinators are especially particular about safety because that is a communication nerve of the defense. That's a way that you can get your message as a coordinator delivered to the players via a player. So Raheem Morris was a safety himself at Hofstra, and we'll see how he feels about Ji'Ayir Brown in that 49ers uniform. In all likelihood, based on the way that we saw things develop last year, based on the fact that Ji'Ayir is, at this point, an established 49er, you don't expect the trade, but anytime that somebody's entering a lame duck year in his contract, Ji'Ayir Brown has also achieved some proven performance escalators to where he's going to be making $3.2 million this year. It's not guaranteed, though. Anytime you have those setups and you're not sure if that player is penciled in as a guy of the regime, especially of the new defensive regime, with both Raheem Morris and Matt Eberflus atop the 49ers defense, well, when those things line up, then you look at a potential trade, and it is a lame duck year for Ji'Ayir Brown. Same thing with Demarcus Robinson, older veteran on the other side of the football. So ultimately, the trade scorecard for the 49ers right now, they made so many of them last year. This year, it's been Osa Odighizuwa in, D. Winters, the linebacker, out. Odighizuwa cost a 3rd-round pick. Winters was a 5th-round pick that went from Dallas to the 49ers. Interestingly, it's been the Cowboys who have been the trade partners both times for the 49ers. That adds to the illustrious trade history between the 49ers and Dallas. Talk about Charles Haley ahead of the 1992 season, and then you could also talk about Trey Lance ahead of the 2023 season. So add Odighizuwa, add Winters to the trade scorecard, and now we kick back and we wait to see what else the 49ers are going to try to execute this year. A potential big ticket trade is obviously going to dominate speculation and dominate the headlines all the way from now until the trade deadline, especially if the 49ers are good. That's where talk about Maxx Crosby, that's where talk about Myles Garrett will never fully go away. It's not likely, but it's obviously possible, especially with this 49ers regime. They have traded very, very aggressively. See Christian McCaffrey back in 2022. But every season but one has featured an in-season pre-deadline trade for the 49ers with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan as the brain trust. So fair to say that we'll likely see at least a smaller transaction or two still to come ahead of this year's deadline. And that's why I like to keep score. By the way, they have Mexican food in Prague. That's a Mexican restaurant. I'm not all too sure how good it is because it seems to be hard to find good Mexican food outside of Mexico itself or California. But just so you know, the world is globalizing. And at this point, you can get yourself a burrito, even way out here in Prague. If I had more time, I'd do some burrito testing, but I've got 49ers OTAs to get back to a little bit later this week. And one thing that is interesting when we talk about the 49ers adding Odighizuwa, shipping away Winters, and then potentially setting themselves up to have more capital before the deadline if they do trade away somebody like a Demarcus Robinson or like a Ji'Ayir Brown. They have already talked about arming themselves with some tradable ammo ahead of the 2026 deadline. One of the 5 trades that the 49ers executed during draft weekend actually earned them an extra 6th round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. And Kyle Shanahan actually directly said that could be more ammo for the 49ers to use ahead of the trade deadline. So you could see where the 49ers' minds are at if we hadn't gotten plenty of hints already based on how San Francisco has acted this offseason, signing guys like Mike Evans, signing a player like Dre Greenlaw, setting themselves up for a big run at it here in 2026. And of course, I think one of the big moves to push some chips in was to trade that 3rd round pick for Osa Odighizuwa. It was an immediate need along the inside of that defensive line. They need that versatility there. I think we've showed you plenty of versatility with this video, and the 49ers now have it with Osa, who seems so excited about this new defense that he's going to be playing under with Raheem Morris. And he also gets his former defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, on the 49ers staff, so that probably helps the transition as well. But I'll keep on going back to that key number. 52 pressures last year, almost as many as the 49ers defensive tackles combined. If he can add any semblance of run defense, well, 49ers have already drafted and are grooming some run defenders and Alfred Collins and CJ West. Obviously, they've got another pass rusher in Grayson Holton who joined through this past draft. The Hulk, Sebastian Valdez, is still on the team. I mean, it's a night and day difference when you look at this 49ers defensive line, especially the interior versus just last year. Showed you a lot in this video. I think that next time that we talk 49ers, we have to give you a Prague burger review.